Paso. My name is Marisa Limon-Garza. I'm the Executive Director of Immigrant Advocacy Center, an organization that was born out of the work of accompanying people that are migrating. Over 35 years ago, the organization was established as the organization was established 35 years ago as part of the vision and need of what we were seeing with people from Central America coming to this area seeking political asylum. And so the legal services that we provide meet people where they are in various stages of their reality. And so earlier today, we visited the Pasos Ajeno exhibit where you could see a lot of the realities that make up some of the context of where we find ourselves today, the natural migration that follows, the narratives that are built around that, and the realities. And then of course we heard from Dr. Hyman, very critical assessment of particular border studies that put into context some of these larger systems, whether they're maquilas, other kinds of transportation of guns and other things. And then there's the work that you've been doing. It's my understanding that for the past few days you've been really leveraging your support to be able to help people in a humanitarian need. The organization that I work with is a legal service provider and an advocacy org, and so we really work on very specific components. The reality is that this work is very holistic and large and encompasses many more things. Immigration itself is a very large topic, and so for us, you coming here was a super important extension of the work that you've provided through the solidarity work, through the witness, through the commitment to be part of our region. Right now, you are situated at Café Mayapan, which is part of La Mujer Obrera. This is a women's cooperative organization that was established kind of in light of that maquila industry that Dr. Randall was talking about. This was a garment workers industry. This is a place where there was very abusive practices of labor. This was the industry for people, mostly migrant women. And those migrant women stayed in this community and have persisted. And so the organizing that comes out of this space and place is designed to really be in solidarity for the world, not just as it is, but the world as people want to make it. This is a social justice venture, and all of the proceeds go back to the community into the service of what they have. It's not operational right now because I think they're doing some other work, but there is a clothing, fair trade clothing cooperative, as well as a daycare center, and all of this really is part of a larger group of organizing to preserve and maintain the humanity of a person, not just to commodify a person by what they can provide in terms of goods and services in the maquila industry or in the garment work industry, but for the real riches that they provide through their lived experience and through their knowledge and their full personhood. And so it's an honor and a privilege to welcome you all today. I will act as a brief MC for you all and just thank you again for joining us. This is a moment where we are 4 years plus into, well, many more years plus, but we've seen so much dynamic change at the southern border. And when you all were coming, we wanted to just provide a space for people to be able to learn, to listen, and to engage and to break bread. There's a level of exhaustion, I think, in this kind of justice work that's real, but there's also this hope by accompanying real people as they go through these processes and in human connection with folks like you that is rejuvenating for folks like me and others at the southern border. Before I turn it over to some other presenters who are going to speak, I want to make sure and introduce other local organizers like Diana Martinez, as well as Patrick Giuliani, who's representative from Hope Border Institute. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Josh Bridget at this event tonight.
So here we are on this journey, at an important stop on our journey. We just saw Trujillo, and here we are in El Paso, kind of the place where they piloted the family separation. I wrote this down because I wanted to be able to say, I guess, what I was thinking at the time we started. And if you'll bear with me, I'll read it to you, and then we'll see if there's anything different now, because a journey changes things, doesn't it? It may not change things on the ground so much, but it certainly changes things inside us. We're traveling from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean, all 2,200 miles of the border between the United States and Mexico. We come to honor those who come to the aid of people in motion, and we come to mourn those who die and suffer the consequences of a border that persecutes those who struggle to move and survive. We are witnesses. We believe that change cannot come unless we see the border's cruelty, no matter how hard it is to look. And God, it is hard sometimes, isn't it? And while we look at the misery caused by a system of often deadly deterrence, we envision a world where the land is as unbounded as the sky. We are engaged in the subversive act of seeing. So here's what I saw yesterday, or what I heard and saw. I was standing on the Juarez banks where I was speaking to a Venezuelan man where the camp had been that was wiped away by bulldozers. And we were watching people on the opposite bank filing up to turn themselves into the Border Patrol. And he told me of his journey from Venezuela through the Darien Gap, on La Bestia, the train, riding on the top, and he told me of the infant girl who died along the way and was carried to the end in her mother's arms. That's what we're seeing. That's what other people are not seeing. The border not only stops people, but it stops us looking. We're here to look past that, to muscle our way past that, and to see what is going on the other side, on this side, at the bus station where so many helped yesterday. That's what we're here for. And we're here to see those people we love here in El Paso, we've gotten to know over the years. And we're here to make a journey, each one of us making our own journey that brought us to this journey, the rest of the journey, and the journey will carry on after it ends. Our journey is a story, and it's our job to make that journey, to tell everybody about it. Everybody about it. So your job is to write it down, publish it, send it out, tell the story. There isn't one story. We're a caravan. And one of our ideas is also to show people what we're doing. So by stringing our cars along, putting signs up and flags, and riding along this border, we expect to be seen. Our vigil is a moving vigil. Our job is to be that caravan. It's not a way of getting from one place to another. It's a way of showing what we're doing. So while it'll accomplish the task of getting us from one body of water to another, the idea is to be seen. So when we string our cars together and we have our flags in our windows and our magnets on the side and our posters and our signs, our banners, that's what we're doing here. We're letting people know that we're here. We're letting people know by showing ourselves. We are the purpose of this journey. The sight of us is our vigil. Camilo is going to give you a different perspective, as he always does. And I'm going to ask him to come up and talk now.
Well, everybody, I'm so honored to be here, but among other things, it's because I'm coming home. I lived in El Paso during that terrible period of family separation. I had the honor of working with Marisa at Hope Border Institute, so Patrick, bienvenido. Hope is present here as well. The work of Marisa now continuing that began at Hope at Las Americas. For me, this is really a homecoming, And always when we did events that had special meaning, we came here. We came here to Mujer Obrera. So for me, this has a lot of personal significance that I just want to share with you. I mean, El Paso continues to be my spiritual home, and especially with colleagues like Marisa and like Patrick. Hermana Maria Antonia, I think, is not here right now, from the Sisters of the Immaculate Conception. Many of you met with her, but those were my family too. So I just want to share that part of this. And the two moments that I want to kind of invoke, and we'll be engaging with them, those moments respectively, later today and in the next couple of days, we'll be going to Ascarate Park at 5 p.m., which is the memorial for the victims of the El Paso massacre, which has to be understood in that way, which specifically targeted people of Mexican origin and whose rhetoric was about the great replacement theory, right? That we've heard about in the context of Buffalo, for example, and Charleston, and the Tree of Life in Pittsburgh, and so on, right? And elsewhere around the world. And it was about the, quote, Hispanic invasion of Texas. We heard a little bit about the other side of that story, like who invaded who, maybe. We might want to flip the terms in that equation for a moment. But I think we have to think about, we're talking about the settler colonial origins and persistence of those legacies in Texas today, and how they became expressed in structural violence against our people. El Paso was what was designated by the Trump administration, and I would argue by the current administration because of its neglect, at best, as ground zero for the most regressive, the most violent policies. All of that culminated in first and family separation, which, as Josh reminded us, was tested here, as we discovered at Hope Border Institute through our research, and documented through our research before family separation caught on as kind of a national issue. We were seeing it happen. It was tested between July and December of 2017, before zero tolerance was formally launched with family separation as its principal mechanism in April of 2018. It began in El Paso, but it is also ground zero El Paso for what we described when we were at Hope, and many of us continue to carry with us. It was also ground zero for hope and for resistance. Hope and resistance. And that's what Mujer Obrera represents and embodies. So we're honored to be here to support Mujer Obrera, to support those who are working here on the ground in El Paso, and to pick up that thread. The other thread that I want to mention that you will encounter in a very powerful way at Antelope Wells are the stories of Jacqueline Cal Maquin and of Felipe Gomez Alonso, the migrant children indigenous from Guatemala who died in El Paso or its environs, and it's the connection between Antelope Wells and El Paso, in December 2018. Another crucial moment for those of us who were living this process, this reality here on the ground in El Paso. I will never in my life forget the summer of 2018, and I will never in my life forget December of 2018, which was also Christmas in Tornillo. It was also when Tornillo was winding towards the story we know, when Josh's vigil became collective and community-based and national and international. That was the genesis of Witness at the Border. That's how we got here. Something that I always try to remind people, this is why we witness. This is why we're here, because of those stories. I also want to welcome some who have joined us here. I'm speaking here today. I mean, I sort of, in Spanish, we say, tengo dos camisetas, right? You know, I have sort of two hats. One is, my honor of being part of the core group of Witness at the Border, what we call the leadership team. It's a collective, right? But that built on Josh's vigil and tried to make this an ongoing process, even during the pandemic. And now we're back, right? I mean, this is all of you, all of us. but I'm also the executive director of the National Lawyers Guild in San Francisco. And that is also a camiseta, a hat for me. And so we have the honor today of hosting you. I want to introduce my colleague, a representative of our board, Judith Merkinson, if you can stand for a moment. Because Merck will be continuing the journey with you. I'm going to have to fly back to San Francisco because I've got to do my job, right? She's my boss, among others. It's a collective as well. But the key thing is that you know that the National Lawyers Guild is with you, not just the San Francisco Bay Area chapter. Both of us, Merck and I, are active on the international committee of the Guild and other networks within the Guild. The Guild is with you, not just the San Francisco Bay Area office. And that's why we wanted to host you today. This is what we're trying to contribute to this mix in conjunction with Witness. So it's, but why are we here today, besides the fact that we happen to be here because of the itinerary, the logistics of the journey? It's because it's International Human Rights Day. International Human Rights Day, December 10th, marks the anniversary of the adoption at the UN of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on December 10th, 1948. That's the very concrete, specific significance, way beyond logistics and way beyond any itinerary. As we speak around the world, in Palestine, in Haiti, in Peru, fighting back against the recent coup that many of you may have read about, removing the legitimately elected president, Pedro Castillo. As we speak in Iran, in China, in Russia, throughout the UK, France, Italy, the EU, everywhere around the world, in Turkey, people are marching and mobilizing under the flag of human rights, December 10th, just as they would on May 1st, for example, on International Workers' Day, or on International Women's Day, March 8th. It has equal importance today. And also, December 9th, we know that Jacqueline Calmaquin's death was December 8th. December 9th was the date that the United Nations approved the Genocide Convention. The Genocide Convention. So there were twin acts at the UN that month in 1948. On December 9th, the Genocide Convention. On December 10th, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We are here in the spirit of both, because one of the things we've tried to contribute through Witness and through the work of the Guild, through your witnessing, through each of you and what you bring to this beautiful table that we're sharing today, is this concept of migrant genocide. Migrant genocide. Let's bring those pieces together in our work, in our reflections, in our actions, locally, nationally, and internationally. It's about human rights without borders, but it's about understanding that in contexts like what happened in El Paso, what we will be observing tonight at Azcárate Park, in contexts like that Walmart mass shooting that has been essentially reduced to that, what we have is the makings of a new international crime, which we insist must be recognized. Migrant genocide. Whether it's at the US-Mexico border, or here in El Paso, or in the Aegean or the Mediterranean, or in the environs of Australia. It's the same thing. It's the same process. The last thing I want to do is share something that has to do with Tornillo and Christmas. If I can find it. And it's by a poet who's accompanied us throughout the way. Many of you heard when we began this journey at the waters of the Gulf, at the edge, early that morning on December 3rd, we shared the poem called Floaters, about Oscar and Valeria, by our compañero, poet, lawyer, Martín Espada. He also, I want his voice to be present today, also because, again, he couldn't be physically present. He wrote a poem about the children detained at Tornillo that was inspired by what Josh and I discovered. In fact, when I was inside on an inspection visit meeting with the kids, and Josh was at the outside, on his vigil, which was how important those moments were at Tornillo, when the children unjustly detained and abused and subjected to psychological torture and abuse there played soccer. Today, as many are watching and following the World Cup, let me tell you, the real World Cup was at Tornillo, and that's what this poem is about. But it's also a Christmas poem. Ode to the soccer ball sailing over a barbed wire fence. And try to bear with me, it's poetry, no? So the quote is from a very distinguished local journalist that all of us honor and respect, Robert Moore, in the Texas Monthly. That's the epigraph, and it says the following: Tornillo has become the symbol of what may be the largest U.S. mass detention of children not charged with crimes since the World War II internment of Japanese Americans. And this is echoed by our compañeras and compañeros in the Japanese community in the U.S., Suru for Solidarity, that stood with us at Tornillo to demand it be shut down in those terms. And then the poem begins. Praise Tornillo, word for screw in Spanish, word for jailer in English, word for 3,000 adolescent migrants incarcerated in camp. Praise the 3,000 soccer balls gift wrapped at Christmas, as if raindrops in the desert inflated and bounced through the door. Praise the soccer games rotating with a whistle every 20 minutes, so 3,000 adolescent migrants could take turns kicking a ball. Praise the boys and girls who walked 1,000 miles, blood caked in their toes, yelling in Spanish and in a dozen Mayan tongues on the field. Praise the first teenager, brain ablaze like chili pepper Christmas lights, to kick a soccer ball high over the chain link and barbed wire fence. Praise the first teenager to scroll a name and number on the face of the ball, then boot it all the way to the dirt road on the other side. Praise the smirk of teenagers at the jailers scooping up fugitive soccer balls, jabbering about the ingratitude of teenagers at Christmas. Praise the soccer balls sailing over the barbed wire fence, white and black like the moon, yellow like the sun, blue like the world. Praise the soccer ball flying to the moon, flying to the sun, flying to other worlds, flying to Antigua, Guatemala, where Starbucks buys coffee beans. Praise the soccer ball bounding off the lawn at the White House, thudding off the president's head as he waves to absolutely no one. Praise the piñata of the president's head, jelly beans pouring from his ears, enough to feed 3,000 adolescents incarcerated at Tornillo. Praise Tornillo, word in Spanish for adolescent migrant internment camp, abandoned by jailers in the desert, liberated by a blizzard of soccer balls. Tornillo presente.
Thank you for those great words, both Josh and Camilo. I want to recognize Karina, who just arrived here. She's also part of the local groups that are doing the work. I hope everyone has placed their order for food. If not, please make sure that you do that now. We'll have some time to break bread and then continue on with our dialogue, but we want to make sure you have space for that. Restrooms, if you need them, are down the hall to the left. And that's our presentation for right now. We'll have some follow-up comments and welcomes for you folks as they arrive, and Carla will help us through that. But thank you.